Hey everybody, Mac here. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to my channel, whatever it may be. I'm glad to see you and I'm glad you're here so we can talk about some movies. Before we get started, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the little bell so you get notified for every new video that comes on this channel. Today, I am focusing on biopics, true stories, based on a true stories, so on and so forth. I was inspired to do this rant because I recently saw Bohemian Rhapsody and I absolutely loved it. Besides Rami Malek's absolutely electric performance as Freddie Mercury, the movie is such a gift to Queen fans. And then at the same time, it can bring the younger generation and expose them to what a great band Queen was. Harkening back to one of my previous rants, the critics do not like it. It is very by the numbers, there are no surprises, and so on and so forth. Another issue with Bohemian Rhapsody, and frankly this is really why I wanted to do this rant in the first place, is that there are many things in that movie that did not happen, that were just fabricated for dramatic and narrative effect. So the issue I'm going to explore today is it okay to add these little narrative elements that aren't really true to make it more entertaining to the viewer? I'm going to utilize a whole bunch of biopics, including good ones, bad ones, and just way off the rails ones. So let's dig in and see what we can find. So Bohemian Rhapsody, as I already said, it's an excellent movie, but it definitely throws in some non-truths. For instance, it tried to convince the audience that Queen did not play together from 1980 until 1986's Live Aid concert, and that was not true. They played numerous times together. When you're going to make a movie and you're trying to make it entertaining, I think people could kind of give you a little bit of leeway that, yeah, you can change a few things here and there if it doesn't actually work to tell the story. Please keep in mind, guys, these are not documentaries. These are actual motion pictures. If you're watching a documentary, yeah, don't screw with the facts because that's your whole basis. You have to have the facts. But I think when you're telling a movie, when you're telling a story, like Bohemian Rhapsody was a story, you can add things in for dramatic effect that may not have actually happened that way. Now, I can't even begin to tell you the amount of biopics that did that. Ray, the movie Ray, is a perfect example of this. It is a fantastic movie and an amazing performance by Jamie Foxx. It made him an A-list actor. But one of the things in Ray was it showed that he was married to his first wife for a very long time, even up until 1980 when Georgia made him one of Georgia's favorite sons. And that's not true. She was long gone by that point. And it seems to me that the music biopics are the ones that really add these little elements of drama in to make it a little bit more interesting. Like, for instance, Walk the Line, which is the Johnny Cash biopic starring Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon, for which she won an Oscar. You see how this is working out here? That portrays Johnny Cash's first wife as like an absolute raving psychopath, and that really was not the case. Now, when it comes to music biopics like that, the most important aspect of it, in my eyes, is the music. So if you get the music right, whether it's recreated, like Joaquin Phoenix redid every song for Walk the Line, and he did a pretty good job, or they're simply just lip-syncing what is there, as was with Bohemian Rhapsody. Either way, the music is the focus, and I think getting the music to the people that don't know about it is the most important thing when it comes to a music biopic. So if you're going to take some liberties with the story, so be it. Now, you can take another turn, and we go to the more serious movies, that, you know, these more serious biopics, or these most serious true story movies, such as Schindler's List. Schindler's List obviously is an absolutely phenomenal film. Very hard to watch more than once, but still a phenomenal film nonetheless, and deserved all the accolades that it received. But I do recall hearing that Oskar Schindler was not a nice man. And I don't remember the details of it. But again, I think in that movie, when you are telling such an important and absolutely heart-wrenching story and trying to show that this man went against his own party to save these people, I don't think the thing you want to throw in there is be like, oh yeah, by the way, he was kind of a jerk. Doesn't really work there. Along the same lines, in the serious vein of film, are war movies. Like, if you have a war movie based off a real war, that's based on a true story. Now, obviously, there have been fictional stories based, like following certain soldiers during World War II, and you don't know if those soldiers exist. It's just a story to tell with World War II as the backdrop, such as Saving Private Ryan for that instance. Like, Saving Private Ryan takes place during World War II, and those characters, although that situation may have happened, those characters are made up just for the film itself. Now, it didn't take away from the weight of the movie. It still expressed the horrors of war in a way that no other movie had done before it. And it's absolutely amazing. Another war movie I think is comparable to that is Full Metal Jacket. It's Vietnam-based, but it also tells about the horrors of boot camp itself. The late, great R. Lee Ermey, who played the drill sergeant in that movie, was an actual drill sergeant. So that added a whole level of realism, not to mention the fact that Stanley Kubrick directed it. That also added a whole nother level of realism that just goes beyond explanation. And that was amazing. And again, very, very tough to watch because it was so close to what actually happened. That being said, still a fictional story. Then we have biopics based off of singular people. They might be presidents, such as Lincoln, featuring an Oscar-winning turn by Daniel Day-Lewis. Now, although Lincoln was pretty much a straightforward telling of how Abraham Lincoln got the 13th Amendment passed, it was still fascinating just because of the way it was done, the attention to detail, Daniel Day-Lewis's performances, not to mention everybody else's performances in the movie. Really, really intense, great filmmaking by one of our best, Steven Spielberg. On the complete opposite end, there was a movie that came out, I think, a year and a half ago that I guarantee you probably didn't hear of. It was called LBJ, and it was indeed a biopic about Lyndon Baines Johnson, about him becoming the president after Kennedy was assassinated. Starred Woody Harrelson, who gave it his all, but man, awfully, horribly boring film. And it's so funny because it looked like it was trying to be told in the same way that Lincoln was, very straightforward, to the point, but just completely failed. Almost in its own category now, we have like the NASA biopics, probably the most famous being Apollo 13. Now, Apollo 13, unbelievable movie. Another great director at the helm, Ron Howard. Great cast, Tom Hanks, Gary Sinise, Kevin Bacon. Did it take liberties with the story? Of course it did, yes. And I think anytime a movie adds tension like that, that's going to be a liberty, because how do we know when it comes to the technical aspect of things? You're not going to be able to really pinpoint that unless you live through it. Along the same lines is the more recent First Man. Technically amazing film, but once again, it had to take liberties because how do we know it was technically amazing? We weren't there. They're trying to put you in as much as possible, and I think for that kind of effect, it works great. Another awesome biopic came out last year, Hidden Figures. So much fun, and talked about the first African-American women in the space program, and hugely important, hugely impactful, but again, pretty sure not all of it was 100% true. But it doesn't matter because it was made for a really entertaining story and talked about something that most of us don't know a whole lot about. And I think that's really what these biopics are getting at. They want us to see something and they say, oh my gosh, these three African-American women were groundbreaking pioneers, for the space program and for women and for African-Americans. Then you go and do the research and learn more about them. I think that's the whole point of a biopic, like a stepping stone. I know there's more than one of these, but there's definitely a true story movie that sticks in my head as being told almost documentary-like. I mean, that was United 93. And that talks about the plane during 9/11 that the terrorists were trying to hijack and fly into the Pentagon, but it was thwarted by the passengers and then crashed in Pennsylvania. It was told pseudo-documentary, so it felt like it was all 100% real. And we know it isn't real, and we know it took liberties, but I think that filmmaking style for that film was absolutely the right choice and a really intense choice. If you haven't seen United 93, I implore you to watch it. It is very difficult, yes, but also very, very inspiring and just amazing to think about how these great Americans helped to save so many more of us in that horrible day. Then we get into like the hyper stylized biopics. One of the best examples of recent memory, The Wolf of Wall Street. Holy crap, that is an absolutely wild, hilarious, off the rails movie made by one of the greats of all time, Mr. Martin Scorsese. Obviously, they're taking some, narrative liberties when it comes to that, but man, it just made for a great movie. Another one that is wild and almost incomprehensible is The Doors, which is about the band The Doors, specifically Jim Morrison, and it was directed by Oliver Stone. Now, if you know any Oliver Stone's movies, he just doesn't want to tell it as it is. He goes very much in his own style. And The Doors, honestly, it's like watching a 2-hour drug trip. I have never taken hard drugs. This is probably the closest you will ever get to actually feel like you are on them. So thanks, Oliver Stone. By the way, though, Val Kilmer gives a great performance as Jim Morrison in that movie. Along the same lines, but a tiny bit more tame, was Catch Me If You Can, talking about Frank Abagnale Jr., someone who eluded the FBI for years and years and scammed everyone out of copious amounts of cash. Directed by Steven Spielberg, so you know it's good. It also stars Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio. Of course it's going to be good. And yes, it's an amazing movie, but again, fictional, but for the right reasons. More recent kind of stylized biopic retelling was I, Tonya. Life story of Tonya Harding, the famous figure skater, made more famous for her temper and her supposed crippling of her teammate Nancy Kerrigan. Like a story that crazy that's actually true, I think needs to be a little bit on the wild side, if you will. The last really hyper stylized biopic I'd like to talk about is Tim Burton's Ed Wood, starring a gleefully over the top Johnny Depp as the titular director of the worst movies ever made. It features an Oscar-winning performance by Martin Landau as Bela Lugosi. You might know him better as the original Dracula. This, you can tell right from the start, is completely over the top. And the cool thing about it is Tim Burton decided to film the thing in black and white. So with that being said, you know right off the bat that you're in for something a little bit wild. Now, yes, Schindler's List was filmed in black and white, but for a completely different reason. The last one I want to talk about is The Conjuring, because the main characters in that, the Warrens, are real people. And they're real people that help other people with supernatural problems. That kind of gives you, the viewer, the opportunity to decide, how real is this? Meaning based on your belief in the supernatural. And I think that was a really cool angle to come at that story with, not to mention the fact that it scared the ever-loving crap out of me. I think the point I am making here is that biopics, or based on a true story films, are allowed to take narrative and creative liberties in order to make the film more interesting to the viewer, in order to maintain that 3-act structure that we as moviegoers are so used to. You don't want that. You want something a little bit more informative. That's when you either A, go watch a documentary, or B, read a book. Me, I'd just rather watch a movie and then kind of get the rest of my facts afterwards. Film is a perfect medium for almost any type of story. And as you've seen here, most of the biopics that I brought up feature Oscar-nominated or Oscar winners. So with these awards, obviously Hollywood is still going to continue to make these biopics. And I'm perfectly fine with that, as long as you can adhere to some truths, as you put forth some of the most important things in that person's life, if we're talking about a biopic strictly, or in the course of the story you're trying to tell, without just blatantly lying to us. If you can do that and still maintain a 3-act structure and still maintain a really enjoyable film, hey man, I'll keep going to see biopics. So what about you guys? What are some of your favorite biopics? What are some of your favorite based on a true story movies? What are some of your least favorite? Please do me a favor. Jump down in the comments and share it with me. And again, if you like what you see here, hit the notification button to get all the new videos. Like, subscribe, tell your friends. But until next time, this is Max saying, I'm out.